I wore a skimpy dress and went to a men's party to get attention when I came back home. Have you ever been in a situation where you want to let loose, but you end up letting loose in the wrong places and with wrong people? I so regret the day I went to the men's party because I wanted to let loose because it destroyed the only good thing that I had with my fiancé. I would never forget his face when I came back, and the things he did made me regret ever going to that party. The alcohol that you were drinking suddenly gets out of the system right away. Have you ever had one of those nights where you just want to have some fun and let loose? Well, that's exactly what happened to me recently. I made the decision to go to a party that was specifically for men, thinking it would be a great way to have a good time and meet new people. Till this very moment, I am still in denial and can't seem to get over the fact that I had lost my fiancé because I had decided to be stupid and did something that had put my relationship in jeopardy. There is no one to blame but myself. I did all of that, and to tell the truth, I regret it, and I still want my fiancé back. I would even trade anything just to get him back to me. My fiancé, Thomas Morris, male 34, and I, female 32, met at a football match that I had gone to watch in Florida Tech Panther Stadium a few years ago. He was sitting next to me, and since I was alone, he was also alone. We ended up chatting, talking about football and general stuff. Since then, we got along. We had a lot of fun while watching the match. Another thing that made it so much fun was that we were supporting different teams, and mine won, by the way. He would complain about the cheating referee, saying he was favoring my team. Thomas was just a ball of fun and happiness. He was able to make me forget about my miserable life that I had at home for once. I'm not a person who is good at socializing, but with Thomas it was just easy. The conversations were flowing so smoothly and I was having a lot of fun. We exchanged numbers during the game, and from there onwards we became inseparable friends. One thing about Thomas is that he is overprotective, and when he loves for real. He's a great guy. He's sweet, kind, and humble, but do him wrong. It would be like you had caused a commotion in hell. That guy can hold grudges, and when he avenges himself, it doesn't get really nice. You would even regret ever stepping on his foot. I had learned that when some guy, I think they knew each other from way back. That guy called him names and reminded him of the past that he had told me that he wanted to forget about. The things he did to the guy were scary. He was really heartless at that time, and for me to witness it made me kind of scared of Thomas. You know, when you witness some scary and heartless **** for the first time, you get traumatized for days or even weeks. That was me. After what Thomas did to that guy, I was traumatized and didn't want to see Thomas for a couple of days. My friendship with Thomas went on for like 7, if not 8 months, until he confessed his true feelings for me. I had seen his actions and the way he was acting when with me that he was no longer treating me as a friend. I was relieved when he eventually decided to break the confusion and confessed. At first I was surprised I wouldn't lie. I mean, the guy is handsome and all. So I had thought that our relationship will only be a friendship. I didn't see myself as his type of girl that he would date or even propose to marry. So Thomas and I didn't date for too long. It took him like 5 or 6 months to propose. And the day he proposed, I couldn't believe it, you know. With my history of non-lasting relationships, I had really thought I had bad luck when it came to relationships because they never lasted even 6 months at least. And all the men that I had dated would break up with me for one reason. I do not meet their standards and satisfactions. I couldn't believe it. I had thought I was the one with the problem, but I wasn't. My relationship with Thomas was everything and more. It was truly a bliss, and I felt so secured and loved in him. He was my first true and genuine man that I had fallen in love with. Yes, I had my doubts about our relationship, and I had thought that maybe it wouldn't last just like my previous relationships, but it surprised me when we had lasted for years. From there, I knew that I wasn't the problem. The guys that I was dating before Thomas really ate up my self-esteem. I started looking down on myself, thinking that I would never be good enough for any man, only for God to turn the tables and give me Thomas, the best man that I had ever dated, and the man who truly loved me for me, and not for what I had to offer. Thomas loved me for who I really am. We had a deep connection and chemistry that no one would actually think of. Sometimes we would act like we were siblings, and sometimes like lovers or best friends. Thomas was my go-to guy whenever I had a problem. He knew how to make me feel better when I would sometimes feel under the weather. He knew me from inside and outside. He knew me when I was happy or sad. And I had ruined all that just because of lust and desires. How could I ruin such a good thing that was going on between Thomas and I? It was really selfish of me. But one thing I would never forget is the revenge or the actions that he took when I came back from the men's party. It was something that I had never expected, and it still haunts me till today. Thomas and I would go to parties and visit new clubs or pubs. It was really a great experience to get to explore places with your partner. The relationship that I had with Thomas really meant a lot to me, and I truly regret ever going to that party, because it made me lose the only thing that mattered to me, and the only person close to my heart. I just wanted to have some fun, but I guess the fun had me instead. How could I be so stupid and careless? A few years later, our relationship was under the rock. We would argue most of the time and sometimes end up going to bed angry at each other. Mind you, we had talked about going to bed angry at each other. We had agreed that no one would go to bed angry or sad because of another person. We agreed to communicate about things that we don't like and the things that make us angry to avoid going to bed with a heavy heart. A lot was happening in our relationship to a point that I would somehow feel like I was going back to my past life, whereby I was drinking a lot, partying a lot, and had flings here and there with men. I had no control over myself, and that had started when I lost my father in a shooting that had taken place between some gangsters in the police department. My father was a cop, so he actually passed on while on duty. I was shattered when I heard about his passing, and I somehow lost myself. Another thing, Thomas was not always available since he was an event coordinator. His job demanded his most attention and time, so that kind of affected me because his events would take most of his time to a point that he wouldn't have time for me. His attention was something that I would only look at our pictures and remind myself of our old happy and less busy days. Thomas would go maybe to another city or to another country to host an event, and he would go for days, if not weeks or months. His traveling made things really hard for us, especially for me, because even our intimate moments were no longer the same. I loved Thomas a lot, and heck, I still love the guy. The relationship really meant a lot to me. It was so special. So one day when Thomas was outside the country with work, I was left in the house all alone, bored. Since I had no friends or close relatives, the house was truly boring and lonely. Thomas was the only friend I had, and he was also my best friend. I tried staying indoors the first 2 days that Thomas went on, but I couldn't stay in any more longer. So I decided to go and get some fresh air. As I was still sitting in one of the restaurants, I was approached by my long-lost gay friend. Chris, gay friend, male, 31, was actually my best friend in high school, but we lost contact when he moved to Spain for school. I was so happy to see my friend after a long time of not seeing him and not knowing how to reach out to him. I didn't regret getting out of the house that day because it made me reunite with my friend. I know that if Thomas was to learn that I had a gay friend, he would flip because in his head he believes that there's no such thing as gay, because we would be getting along with men who pretend to be women. We once had a talk about gays when we were watching some movie that had gays, and he asked a very awkward and weird question about the LGBTQ+ genders. He asked why gays or transgender don't date lesbians because gays or transgender pretend to be women, while lesbians pretend to be men. To tell the truth, I didn't know how to answer his question because I would also ask myself the same question sometimes and wouldn't get any answer. I just told him that we should actually ask someone who is a transgender or a lesbian that question because it was kind of confusing. I also wanted to know answers to that question because it was really intriguing. So Chris invited me to this party that was going to be at one of his friends' houses in Pinecrest, Florida. Since I was bored and had nothing to do in the house, I told him that I would come to the party. Later on, he sent the coordinates to the party, and I was super excited to be getting a chance to spend with my friend again. I didn't care about whose party it was or who would be on that party. I just wanted to have a good time with my long-lost best friend. I had made it look breathtaking and fit for the party because Chris didn't tell me the theme, so I made one myself. Mind you, that day I didn't speak with Thomas the whole day. I didn't even know when he would be coming back. If I knew that he would be home that day, I would have rejected Chris's invitation and made sure that Thomas finds me home. The only thing that was on my mind that day was partying and letting loose. I prepared for the night, and then later I went to the sent coordinates. When I got there, I just couldn't believe it. It was actually a party for men. I wished that Chris would have given me the memo at least just to know what I would be expecting, but I was glad that my outfit was fitting very well. Chris introduced me to the guys, and I would say that they were all good people, chilled and had a vibe that I needed. The party was going well, and the host was looking super handsome. You wouldn't see that he was gay. He was just like every handsome and yummy guy. The party went on. I was drinking like a fish. Not because I had problems or anything, but I just wanted to have some fun and let loose. Plus, I wanted to enjoy my time with my best friend. I had switched off my phone the minute I got into the gate. I had left home with the intention to have fun and be myself for once. I was starting to feel like I was a relative of the house furnisher when I was always in the house. The party was in full swing when I arrived. There were laughs, music, and good vibes all around. I was enjoying myself. mingling with new people and forgetting about the stress of everyday life. It felt liberating to be in the moment and embrace the carefree atmosphere. I was having so much fun and the drinks were flowing. No one was asking anyone any questions. No one cared about you or what you do. The only thing that brought us together was the party and letting loose. As the night went on, I may have gotten carried away with the excitement. I let loose and had a few too many drinks. Time seemed to fly by, and before I knew it, it was time to head home. Mind you, the time was almost after 3 in the a.m.s, meaning I had lost track of time to get home, but I didn't care because I thought that there was no one at the house. At about 4 a.m., I decided to go home. I told Chris that I was going, of which I don't think he had heard me because he was sloshed. I left and tried to drive back home. I hoped that I wouldn't find Thomas because if he saw that I was driving while in the influence of alcohol, he would get mad, and I would get in deep trouble. Little did I know that the universe and God was not actually on my side that day. When I arrived at my doorstep, I was trying to unlock the door, but I was failing dismally because of the state that I was in. The door eventually unlocked. I thought I was the one who unlocked it. But when I opened the door, I was greeted by a surprising sight. He was standing there, waiting for me. I couldn't believe my eyes. How did he know I would be coming back at this exact moment? I got medium sober at the very same moment. I didn't know that he was coming back home, and the worst part was that I didn't even bother to check my phone. I was just excited to be going to the party and getting a chance to get out of the house. I tried acting strong and looking less intoxicated, but I failed. My walking steps were evidence that I was really intoxicated. His expression was a mix of concern, anger, and disappointment. It was clear that he had been worried about me, but he was angry and disappointed in me. I felt a pang of guilt for not considering how my actions might affect him. I tried explaining to him, but he didn't want to hear anything. Instead, he left me at the kitchen doorstep and went to bed. I knew then that I was in deep trouble, and there was nothing I would say nor do that would convince him otherwise. He was angry at me. I ended up falling asleep on the couch, and I was woken by his enraged face in the morning. You know when you were highly sloshed the previous night and you wake up with a great hangover the following day? That was me. I looked at Thomas with apologizing eyes, hoping that maybe he would calm down, but it seemed like I was pouring paraffin in an already blazing flames. He asked where I was coming from, intoxicated and at midnight. I tried lying to him and told him that I was at a friend's party. I just couldn't mention that I had gone to a party that was full of men. I had thought lying to him was going to make him move on from the situation. But little did I know that the man that I was in a relationship with actually had a video of the party. He asked if we had started lying in our relationship. I was confused by his question. I tried to convince him and told him the same lie that I had already told him. But the man of the house did the unthinkable. He threw his phone at me and told me to watch the video. What I saw almost made my heart stop. I tried explaining to him and apologizing, but instead the guy just gave the greatest slap of them all. I couldn't believe it, I was so shocked and my mind and whole body just froze. He literally told me that he had thought I was different, but I was worse than his previous girlfriends. He was so angry to a point that he even called me names and said that I had gone to that party to get those men's attention, and that was why I was wearing a skimpy and revealing outfit. I felt so disrespected by Thomas, but because I knew that I was the one at fault, I decided not to pay attention to it, and humbled myself and apologized for my behavior. I told him that I didn't know that he was coming back on that day, and I had wanted to get some fresh air because I was tired of always being cooped up in the house. We argued a lot to the point that he told me that if I had used my thick skull, I would have known that he was coming back because he had called me so many times, but I was unreachable. He told me that I had disappointed him, and he would make sure that I regret ever going out of the house and went to that party because he was going to make me feel the pain that he was also feeling. I wondered what he would do because it's not like I had cheated on him or something. Or maybe I did, because on the video it showed me kissing with some guy that I don't even remember while another was holding me on my waist and spanking my ass. But is that even cheating? Another thing I don't even remember doing until Thomas showed me the video. It was so embarrassing and humiliating, I had wished for the ground to open up and swallow me at that moment. After our heated argument, he told me to pack my bags and move out of his house. I was so shocked by his sudden decision. I begged him while crying, kicking and apologizing, but he was hearing none of it. He even insisted to help me pack and told me that he won't be in a relationship and even live with a cheap person who goes around allowing other men to spank her and kiss her and say she was drunk. I just couldn't believe Thomas. I tried talking to him in a civilized manner, but he didn't want to hear it. He wanted me gone. I went to our bedroom and packed my clothes. I told him that I was going because I wanted him to calm down and talk about the issue in a civilized and mature manner. Instead of answering me, he just looked at me like I was the most disgusting thing that he had seen. That really broke my heart. I went back home with a heavy heart. I just couldn't believe that the only man who had shown me genuine love had given up on me and dumped me like a used toilet paper. It was really a rough time for me because weeks passed and I had heard nothing from Thomas. I even tried calling him hoping that he would answer, but it seemed like he had blocked my number. During those weeks, I had decided to log on to my social media platform, and maybe I would find him online so I could speak to him. But to my surprise, I was met by the same video from the party, and there was a caption that said, "Sometimes we fall in love with people thinking they are the one, only for us to find out after years of being together that the person you love is actually a snake in a sheep's skin. After this, I'm never going to forgive her, and I don't think I would ever be in any relationship again." That caption took the last straw of being patient and hoping that my man would somehow get back to me. It drove me straight to depression. I had not only broken my relationship, but I had also broken the heart of the man that loved me and has been there for me when no one was. The only man who knew me when I was down, happy, or stressed. I had jeopardized that, and it got destroyed because of my stupidity. 2 months later, my mother called our church pastor to pray for me, then got me a virtual therapist because I didn't want to face the world. I had my therapy sessions while at home. Yes, my mother was very disappointed at me when she heard that I had gone to a men's party and not intentionally cheated on my fiancé. She got angry at me and gave me a silent treatment for a week. My breakup with Thomas really shattered me, and to top it up, the video that he had posted on his timeline and the caption almost drove me to an early grave. I didn't know the damage that I had done to Thomas's heart until I read that caption. He hated me. Well, I think he still hates me. 1 month later, I had started to heal. I knew that somehow I had to move on and try to live with the fact that what happened had happened, and there was nothing I would do to change it. My mother convinced me to start focusing more on my catering business that I had abandoned for years. My mother was the one taking care of my business, and I am so grateful to her. My relationship with Thomas made me forget some of the things that were putting food on the table. From that day forward, I learned the value of balance and considering the impact of my actions on others. While it's important to let loose and have fun, it's equally important to be responsible and mindful of those who care about us. I'm still on the healing journey, even though it's really hard having to get my heart to move on from Thomas. How do I deal with this?
Hi, Reddit. I have always been a big fan of this social media, and so I see it sufficient to post about my situation here, to solicit and get some advice from you guys, and to also share my story. I feel like some people could learn a lot from it, especially those currently cheating or planning to cheat on their partner. I am currently in a very tight spot and need help. My name is Mia, and I am a 30-year-old woman. I've been married to my husband, Ethan, who is a 32-year-old man, for 6 years. We dated for 2 years before getting married. We have 2 kids, Lisa, who is an 8-year-old girl, and Nicholas, who is a 6-year-old boy. We live in South Carolina in the United States. It is a small town, but we are happy with it. My husband grew up here, and his family is quite wealthy and connected here. Ethan and I first met in an escape room LOL. We instantly connected and took to each other like fish to water. There was just a beautiful spark between us. A bunch of years went by since our first date, and you know what? The spark between us is still kicking. I'm crazy about my husband. He gets me, nails the whole dad and husband thing, and goes all out for our kids. Our bedroom action? No complaints there. It's active and awesome. No, we make it a point to squeeze in date nights every weekend we're not drowning in responsibilities. Overall, our married life is like living in a dream. But let's be real, we're far from perfect. He's got stuff I wish he'd tweak, and I've got my own list of changes for me. It's those quirks, though, that make us a perfect mess together. But here's the kicker. There was this small hiccup. I messed up, started cheating. Yeah, it's like this dark cloud hanging over our otherwise kick-ass marriage. I got caught up in something messy at work, and honestly, I can't pinpoint when or how it all went down. All I know is I ended up having a thing with a coworker. It's like this secret I stumbled into without a clear start. It's not like there was some big plan, it just kind of happened. Now I'm stuck dealing with the fallout from it. The start of this whole mess traces back to about 6 months ago when my affair partner and I both joined the company and began our training simultaneously. Even in those early days, something felt off. I noticed he was unusually friendly, especially towards me. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe he was just a sociable person. The thing is, the more I tried to ignore it, the more he seemed to crank up the friendliness. It became this weird thing of him being extra nice, and me trying my best to downplay it. It was like this unspoken tension building up, creating a strange feeling that I couldn't shake off no matter how hard I tried. Jason, my coworker, was this handsome and sociable guy that everyone at work seemed to adore. He had this reputation as the fun guy, always bringing positive vibes to the office. What puzzled me, though, was his extra effort to be nice to me. It felt like he went out of his way, and I couldn't quite figure out why. Then, after about a month or two, Jason applied to transfer to my department. Now, that really threw me for a loop. I couldn't wrap my head around why he'd want to switch, especially considering we didn't have any special projects or collaborations. Things got even stranger when we were both at a coworker's wedding. Jason, in his usual outgoing manner, tried to dance with me. I had to put my foot down and refused, explaining that it just didn't feel right or proper given our work relationship. Jason's relentless niceness was like a never-ending loop. Whenever I told him to ease up, he'd apologize. But the very next day, he was right back at it, trying to get close to me. The weird part? I could have easily taken it up with HR, but if I'm being honest, there was a part of me that enjoyed the attention. He had this knack for noticing every little thing about me and showering compliments, especially when I changed up my look. It was a daily routine for him, complimenting me on stuff my own husband wouldn't notice. It felt like I finally had someone acknowledging my existence. To be completely real, I started dressing up at work just to get those compliments from Jason. It became this strange cycle where his attention filled a void, even though I knew deep down it wasn't right. However, the day I finally went all the way with Jason happened during a coworker's birthday party. The workplace had this tight-knit vibe, and we all tended to be quite friendly. Whenever there was a celebration, like this coworker's birthday party, we'd all get invites. The atmosphere was laid back and everyone was having a good time. It was one of those moments where work boundaries blurred and we could just relax. Jason, true to form, was there, and the social setting made it easier for his charm to work its magic. The usual friendly banter took a turn, and before I knew it, I was falling into Jason's trap. At the birthday party, Jason stuck to his routine, giving me a compliment on my appearance that genuinely brought a smile to my face. As the night progressed, the drinks flowed freely, and before I realized it, I was a bit more than tipsy. The details of when things took a turn with Jason are hazy, but what I do remember is that, in the moment, I found myself enjoying it. The aftermath hit me hard the next day, though. I had cheated on my husband. Regret flooded in, and I made a solemn vow to steer clear of Jason. Frustration and anger boiled within me, leading to a heated confrontation where I cursed him out and explicitly told him to stay away. In an attempt to cut ties, I even went ahead and blocked him, attempting to put an end to the situation that had gone out of control. The enjoyment I experienced during that moment with Jason was something I couldn't admit, even to myself. The days that followed were heavy with guilt. I reached a point where I couldn't face the idea of going to work and encountering Jason. In my confusion, I called in sick, using it as an excuse to seeing Jason, as I was still so ashamed and angry. My husband, unsuspecting, had asked about the birthday party. I gave him the edited version, claiming it went on as usual and that I'd gotten a little tipsy. I conveniently left out the part where I got drunk, spent the night there, and sent him a text message explaining that I'd stay over at a friend's place to sober up. When he offered to pick me up, I declined, assuring him everything was fine. In reality, I spent the night with Jason. There was no way my husband would recover from that. Returning to work after those tumultuous days away was a challenge. I attempted to keep my distance from Jason, but that resolve only lasted for a brief period. Within a few days, he was back to being overly friendly, disrupting my efforts to maintain a professional distance. He'd bring me coffee, grab lunch for me during his break, and flash random smiles my way. Attempting to address the situation, Jason assured me it wasn't my fault, but his. He apologized and urged me not to worry, emphasizing that what my husband didn't know wouldn't harm him. His attempts to comfort me was surprising, but what I desperately need. He even suggested I unblock him so we could talk after work. Now call me stupid or silly and you would not be wrong. I messed up big time. Jason kept pushing, and against my better judgment, I unblocked him. The guy's texts were annoying yet weirdly comforting. He'd send good morning and good night texts, blab about his day, and keep saying it wasn't my fault. He even suggested we could keep our thing going without my husband knowing. And stupidly, I started buying into Jason's words. His texts, persistent as they were, messed with my head. On one hand, I was annoyed by his constant messages, but on the other, I found myself questioning my own stance. After all, what my husband didn't know would not hurt him. Jason didn't waste time breaking through my defenses. Before I knew it, we were in the middle of a secret affair. It was pretty easy to keep it hush-hush since we worked together. We'd sneak off to the restroom during work hours for our secret meetups. I get it. It sounds dumb now, but in the excitement of it all, I was oblivious to how messed up the whole thing was. To throw my husband off, I cooked up a story about wanting to boost my career, saying I'd be putting in more hours at work. Despite my husband being worried about me stressing out, considering he earned more and could handle our bills, I convinced him not to stress. His higher earnings also meant he had more time for the kids, which became handy. While he played the responsible parent, I used the excuse of working extra hours to chill at Jason's apartment after work. We'd either wait for everyone to clear out before our secret bathroom meetings or just head over to Jason's place. Looking back, it's clear I was tangled up in a mess of lies and messed up priorities. Jason had this knack for making me feel like I was the center of the universe, like I was the only one who truly mattered. I found myself smiling more and getting all pumped up to go to work. Sick days off work became a rarity. My husband noticed my newfound enthusiasm for work and said he was glad I was happy. But he also pointed out the obvious. I was neglecting the kids. He was right, but back then I was oblivious to it all. I started tuning out from parenting responsibilities, leaving all the childcare to my husband. Even when I was home, I'd hole up in our study, pretending to be engrossed in work when, in reality, I was deep into texting Jason. The kids started to voice their complaints, wanting more time with me. I'd brush it off, explaining that mommy had to work. This continued for weeks, and my coworkers began noticing the change. Jason and I were suddenly closer, and I wasn't giving him the cold shoulder anymore. I even went to the extent of leaving my car at home sometimes, so Jason could give me a ride back to his apartment. Looking back, I realize how dumb that was. Anyone could have seen me sitting in Jason's car, lol, and someone did see me, lol. But at the time, I thought it was some romantic move. The whole situation seriously had me wrapped up in a cloud of oblivious choices and misguided notions of romance. There were numerous signs, almost like the universe itself was trying to send me warnings to put the brakes on this whole affair. Looking back, it's clear that these cautionary signals were scattered throughout my journey, yet I foolishly chose to turn a blind eye to them. The first hints appeared in the form of my own guilt, a nagging feeling that should have acted as a red flag. Then there were the moments of hesitation, those brief pauses before responding to Jason's messages when I could have reconsidered my actions. Even my kids' complaints and my husband's concerns served as glaring indicators that something was amiss. As if that wasn't enough, my coworkers started noticing the change in dynamics between Jason and me, and the risky behavior of leaving my car behind just to share a ride with him was a glaring signal. It's almost comical how the universe threw these warning signs my way. And yet, in the whirlwind of emotions, I remained oblivious to the impending storm. It's a realization that hindsight often brings. The universe had been dropping hints, trying to redirect my course. In my stubbornness, or perhaps sheer ignorance, I chose to ignore these signals just because I loved the thrill of my affair with Jason. One time, my husband's sister actually caught me riding shotgun in Jason's car in the middle of traffic. It's a miracle she never spilled the beans to my husband. Or maybe she just forgot, as she tends to do sometimes. Another possibility is that she thought she must have been mistaken since I managed to pull off a quick, inconspicuous duck when I spotted her. That moment could have blown the lid off the whole affair, but somehow, luck was on my side and the secret stayed safe. Everything seemed like a typical workday until it all hit the fan. Jason and I were our usual flirty selves at work, sneaking off to the restroom for a quick, intimate session. During lunch, he brought me food and we chatted like any other day. We planned to head to his place after work, so I messaged my husband, telling him I'd be working overtime for a few extra hours. He was cool with it, already home and ready to watch the kids. Perfect, right? Work wrapped up, and as I headed to the parking lot, Jason was waiting for me. A few coworkers stopped to chat, and one even asked if everything was okay between Jason and me. I spun this tale about how we'd become better friends after I realized it was wrong to give him the cold shoulder. She seemed skeptical but didn't press further, just nodding and letting the conversation wrap up. Now it's important to note that I knew Jason wasn't exactly Mr. Clean in the lifestyle department. He had a thing for drugs, but he was a functional addict. If you weren't super tight with him, you wouldn't guess it. Dude looked good, stayed fit, and had this glowing vibe that didn't scream drug addict. But here's the real kicker. Jason wasn't just into using. He also dabbled in dealing, and he kept a stash at his place. One time, he tried to get me on the weed train, but it wasn't my thing. Swore off it real quick and never gave it another shot, LOL. I finished chatting with the coworker and made my way to meet Jason in the parking lot. Feeling a bit hungry, we decided to swing by McDonald's for some takeout. After grabbing burgers and fries, we headed to Jason's apartment. Once there, we dug into our food, catching a movie as part of our usual routine. Then we started getting intimate. Things took a wild turn when, mid-intimacy, we were interrupted by a bang on the door. Turns out, it was the police. Panic set in, and I started scrambling to get dressed, but Jason urged me to calm down, assuring me they probably didn't even have a permit to search him. Maybe they just had a few questions, he said. We reluctantly opened the door, only to find ourselves immediately arrested. Shocked was an understatement. They flashed a warrant and proceeded to ransack Jason's apartment, uncovering not just weed, but also some serious hard stuff. Both of us ended up in cuffs. But here's the kicker. As they were dragging me away, they dropped the bomb that it wasn't just about the drugs. Oh no, they believed I was in cahoots with Jason, tagging me as a dealer too. And if that wasn't enough, they threw in adultery and infidelity. The shock hit me like a freight train. Infidelity? My mind raced. Did my husband report me? Did he somehow know about the affair? Living in South Carolina, where the laws against infidelity are no joke, added an extra layer of dread. Fines or even days in jail were on the table, and the last thing I wanted was to end up behind bars. In a desperate attempt, I tried explaining to the police officer and lying that I was clueless about Jason's illegal activities. However, my pleas fell on deaf ears as the officer insisted on waiting until we reached the police station to hear me out. So I begrudgingly stayed quiet during the journey. Once at the police station, they separated Jason and me, leading us into separate rooms for intense questioning. Overwhelmed with emotions, I broke down in tears and spilled the truth to the police officer. I admitted that I was married and had been cheating on my husband with Jason. I made it clear that Jason was fully aware of my marital status. However, when it came to the drug aspect, I decided to lie. I told the officer that I had no idea Jason was involved in drugs, that I never took any substances from him, and that he never disclosed his drug dealing activities to me. My tears flowed freely as I confessed. I insisted on having my lawyer present. Recognizing they couldn't detain me without pressing charges, the police informed me that I was free to go. However, they strongly recommended I get legal representation, emphasizing that their investigation would persist. They also said I would be called to testify against Jason in court. Of course, to save myself, I quickly agreed. As I was about to leave, one of the cops called me over and dropped a bomb. My husband had snitched on me, giving them Jason's address. They said they usually wouldn't spill the beans, but my husband insisted that they tell me. To rub salt in the wound, they hit me with the news that I was now no longer welcome at home because of my cheating ways. I couldn't hold back the tears, and I literally started crying again. The cops weren't exactly sympathetic to my tears, their expressions showing clear disdain for my infidelity. Despite their judgment, I resolved to go back and beg my husband for forgiveness. So I hopped into a taxi and headed home. But let's be real, what did I really expect? When I arrived, I found all my bags neatly stacked on the front porch. A cold and unwelcome reception, to say the least. Devastated, I knocked on the door, but there was no response. To say I was distraught would be an understatement. I stood there for hours, crying, but it became evident that either they were purposely ignoring me or they weren't home. Left with no other option, I had to gather my bags and find refuge in a hotel for the night. I couldn't even go back to Jason's apartment because he had already blocked me. They had released him, but it was clear he was under investigation and might end up in jail. I am currently in the hotel room, and I feel utterly lost. The weight of the situation has me in complete distress, and I've been crying for hours without a clear idea of what to do next. Attempting to reach out to Ethan, my husband, has been met with silence. He won't pick up my calls or respond to my texts. Even reaching out to my in-laws, Ethan's parents, has proven fruitless as they refuse to answer the phone. My family lives in another state, and the distance makes it challenging to seek solace with them immediately. I am hesitant to travel tomorrow because my priority is to repair my marriage with Ethan and also work. I can't just up and leave. What do you think I should do, Reddit? Please help. Update. Wow, okay, it's been a month since I made that post, and I never expected the post to blow up like this. I've gotten numerous DMs asking for an update, so I guess I owe you guys one, so here's everything that has gone down since. First of all, living in a hotel for a month, no matter how budget-friendly, turned out to be a financial burden. I've had to switch hotels twice in search of more affordable options. On top of this, the heartbreaking reality has set in. Ethan and I are heading for a divorce. After a few weeks of enduring his silence, I reached a breaking point and sent Ethan a heartfelt text, pleading for him to act like an adult and talk to me. Thankfully, he finally relented, breaking the ice and replying to me. We arranged a meeting in a neutral place, a restaurant. It was disheartening to see that he didn't bring the kids, but I understood his need for caution and lack of trust. The entire conversation was gut-wrenching. When he asked me why I had done it, I couldn't come up with a single excuse. The weight of his disappointment was so sad, he told me I had shattered his heart. That Ethan revealed that he was the one who called the cops on Jason. I admitted that I knew, as the police had informed me at the station. Ethan explained that he had instructed the cops to tell me because he had initially planned on cutting all ties with me. I couldn't help but wonder how he knew about Jason's drug involvement, but Ethan simply claimed he had sources. When I asked him about discovering my infidelity, he shared that he found out in various ways. He had seen my text messages with Jason and even had screenshots. Additionally, he claimed to have heard it from people in town, including some of my coworkers who had approached him. I was crushed. I couldn't stop the tears. All I could say on repeat was, "I'm so sorry. I love you. I never meant for this to happen." But he wasn't buying it anymore. The trust was gone. Ethan said he wanted a divorce for our mental well-being. I broke down even more because he made it clear he couldn't get past what I did. The lies I fed him only made things worse. He laid it all out, talking about how he handled everything at home, babysitting, taking care of the kids, while I lied about working late, actually spending time with Jason. The mess I created had wrecked my marriage. Ethan laid it into me. He had been the one carrying way more weight, earning more than me, taking on all the responsibilities, and he didn't even mind that. He reminded me of how absent I was from the kids, absorbed in my own world with Jason. Ethan confessed that he had known about it for a while, hoping I would change, but I never did. He admitted that he believed I wouldn't have stopped if he hadn't made the call to the police. It was like a reality check and a wake-up call. Ethan slammed the door on forgiveness and told me it was never happening. He told me divorce papers were coming. He wanted custody of the kids since he had proof of me being absent a lot in their lives. He asked where I was currently staying, and when I told him a hotel, he teased me about crashing in a hotel and questioned why I wasn't bunking with Jason, making me cry even more. He then told me he was taking the money in our joint account. I couldn't complain, it was majorly his money, but he promised to leave me a little to get by for a few weeks. Ethan said he'd shoot me a text when the divorce papers were ready. When I asked about the kids, he assured me we could meet up next weekend. Despite the fact that I had hurt him, he promised not to keep me from seeing them. But he made it clear that fixing things with the kids was on me, as they'd grown distant during my absence. It hurt, but I couldn't deny that Ethan was speaking the truth, and the weight of my own actions hit me hard. After our heart-wrenching conversation, Ethan left. He even footed the bill for our drinks at the restaurant and left the waitress a tip. I'm still waiting for those divorce papers. When they come, I won't put up a fight. I know I deserve every bit of it, and I'll sign them without a single complaint. It's the least I can do after everything that went down. As for Jason, let's just say he's become a ghost in my life. I haven't seen or talked to him in a while, and truth be told, I don't even care about his fate anymore. I'm still expecting a call from the cops, and when the time comes, I'll testify against him without a second thought. That's the whole scoop on what's been going down recently. Appreciate you taking the time to listen. Here's a nugget of wisdom for everyone out there. Steer clear of cheating on your partner. Seriously, it's not worth it. Take a lesson from my missteps, back to square one for me because, well, I made some dumb choices.